Hello, men, and welcome to the podcast, Messages for Men. I'm your host, Brad Dombaugh, and remember, this podcast is designed for men, about men, and maybe ways we can get a little better. Today, I'm really privileged to have a therapist with us here that practices in Colorado Springs, a young guy, Sam Eldridge, who's also published. His father is John Eldridge, who I've actually read a couple of his books. So I'm excited to have you on, largely because some of our viewing audience are young men.
Yes.
And it's kind of nice to have a younger therapist to come here and talk about some of men's issues and what they're dealing with. So thank you for coming in today. Why don't you just take a moment and kind of introduce yourself and give us a little history of your story?
Yeah, Brad, thank you so much for having me here, and excited to be with you guys that are watching. A little bit about my story. I've been a therapist for 5 years and actually began some of that training over 12 years ago. I was curious about the field while doing other work at the time. So I spent the decade before being a therapist working in the world of young men and having a podcast and writing and integrating creativity while trying to live out our own medicine. This sort of like, if you are saying something that you're not doing, where's the integrity in that?
Yeah.
And so that's very much
kind of practice what you preach.
Exactly. Yeah. If we're not going to be taking it, then it just doesn't line up.
Yeah.
And I think these days that's really true, that if we're not, if we don't feel like we're living it out, then I think people have a pretty strong read on being sold something, Brad.
Sure.
And we're not interested in being sold something that's not genuine.
No. And I know you work a lot with men, correct?
Yep. So I see men and women, but primarily men and couples. And so, yeah, in person, online, it's been an interesting time because, as I was mentioning before we started rolling, like, mental health is at an all-time low from my experience of the stigma around it.
Yeah.
More people are going, and yet it still feels like the frontier for a lot of guys, I think.
Oh, sure. What do you see? Let's talk about this for a second. We'll get to the heart of it.
Yeah.
Well, so what do you see in your practice behind closed doors? I mean, what are the issues that men really face and struggle with today? If you could, I mean, it's probably a myriad of things, but if you could name one or two that you find over and over again that men are having a hard time with, what would it be? What would you see?
Yeah. So I'll start and then drop in a level. And I think most men come because we're chasing after some of the symptoms, right? And we begin to see that like life isn't totally working. I'm snapping. I've got road rage. The alcohol has crept up. The soothing behaviors of pornography. The weight of depression. I'm not able to get out the door anymore. The relational stress has just reached a boiling point. So most folks come in because of the symptoms.
Okay.
And then we have to be really curious about the source, because all of those pieces are really good, but we go chasing anger and we have no idea where it's coming from.
Right.
We're going to get stuck in the world of behavior modification. We're going to get stuck in the world that, like, there's great tools there, but they just don't last quite as long. They don't go as deep. And so what gets guys in the door is often the pain and is often the symptom of anger, stress, fatigue, things kind of coming out sideways.
So do you think this comes about through a boiling point at some point in their life, or is some of this brought about through, let's say, some childhood issues or traumas or family dynamics of things that go on that manifest themselves to the point where I just can't cope with this anymore?
Yeah, we have this expression that we use: whatever is hysterical is historical.
Oh, wow.
So I say that, and where does your mind go, Brad?
Hysteria.
Yeah, a little bit of hysteria.
Stuff where I've been.
Yes. Yep. So that when I say it in this context, the hysterical just means like this feels wildly disproportionate to whatever just happened. The input to output ratio feel wildly off. And so there is this pause moment of, wait, hang on, what's the story here? What actually makes this make sense? If you would like a intro class to a grad program as a therapist, you can start asking this one question: what makes this make sense? What makes this behavior make sense?
Sure.
Because we don't do anything fully irrationally. Now, beyond like the true addictions, and when we begin to rewire our brain, we get down those rabbit trails. Most of us, the majority of men these days, are making decisions that they think make sense to parts of them. So what makes the story make sense, Brad?
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, what is going on with men today? Because we talk about, or the media talks about, loneliness is an epidemic in men.
Yes.
Men are struggling. I read an article just a couple weeks ago about 63% of 18 to 28 or 29-year-olds are not in a relationship. 63%. It's half of that for women. It seems to me when you look at the numbers and you look at the statistics that young men are struggling in many regards. I mean, suicide rate, 70 to 80% of all suicides in the U.S. are committed by men. Incarceration, when you look homelessness, when you look substance abuse. I mean, you take the full gamut. Men seem to have a problem that doesn't seem to be getting better. What is going on in your mind? Is it getting better or is it getting worse for men?
I mean, the objection, Your Honor, leading the witness, right? There is this.
That's a good point.
Yeah, no, I agree
Fair
with
point.
you. I think you look at any of those pieces and go, it's not getting better, right? Like where we're recording this was the suicide capital of the U.S. 7 years ago. There was an article for it in the USA Today. In the UK, suicide's the second leading cause of death. Like there's this crisis, and we would look at it and go, hang on, we have more access to goods and comforts and technology. Like life is better and safer. We've got this longevity increasing. Why the despair?
Right.
If I do this math equation, everything about our modern moment should say, hey, you've got the entire history of human knowledge at your fingertips. You can know the answer to anything you want. Half a second, less. So why do you feel so alone? Why do you feel so full of apathy? And I would say they're actually very connected, right? The digital moment is, from my experience, watching the loneliness of what it's like to grow in a society where we are very disconnected from each other, where online interactions replace face-to-face interactions like this one, where our answers, we get the answer, but it's still at 30,000 feet. It actually doesn't connect to our life. It doesn't go deeper. It doesn't have a practical implication. So when I see this moment, I wanted to jump into it personally. That's why I'm in the career, because I saw that there's just this bleeding wound going on and we need to do something about it. And the conversation is the great place to begin.
Yeah.
I think one of the questions that isn't ever explicitly asked, and I'm curious your thoughts on it, but I'm always kind of keeping my radar out for it, is the question that guys bring to therapy. Is this normal? And am I alone?
Am I crazy?
Yes. There's that, I feel this weight of my life, and is that normal? Am I alone in this? I think a part of that's because we're not having conversations about it.
Yeah. You know, when you stop and think about it for a second, I mean, because of the technology and the way civilization is today, as a man, you could live in your home and never leave it. I mean, think about it. You can have food dropped off. You could have entertainment. You can have porn. You can have, you could eat. You could order clothes. Everything you can do in society today, you could be done in your home, and you never have one personal interaction.
Right.
And I think sometimes, in my opinion, men do that.
Yeah.
They find that maybe an easier way out, especially when you look at some of the soothing that men get involved in and then chasing dopamine. We find an easy way out in doing that. But I think it's destructive and actually self-sabotage because we don't seem to be connecting well with other men and with each other.
Yes. You love research. Did you bump into the World Health Organization's isolation is akin to a pack of cigarettes?
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah. And it was funny, man. There was an Australian study that talked about loneliness, and what they discovered in basically the suicide notes of men, there were two words that are predominant: hopeless and worthless.
Yes. Oh, right. I mean, imagine you just put ourselves in that, wake up in the morning, and what's waiting for you are these two figures, hopeless and worthless.
Right.
Now live your day. Now fight against those two all day long.
How much do you see men battling with, which I fight against big time, the concept of masculine toxicity, of this misogyny and your sexist, and men have got to become more feminized because if they don't, women don't want you, and men struggle to understand where they belong in society. I think part of it because they don't understand what masculinity looks like today.
Yes,
are they expressing that in therapy with you?
Yeah, maybe not as explicitly. That does come up with this. Anytime there's a polarized set of options, I get really curious, right?
Right.
The limbic system in our brain is fight, flight, freeze, fawn.
The lizard part.
Yes, it gets really extreme. So if your options ever feel like a light switch, you're either on this thing or off on this thing, I get just really curious. And I'd invite us to slow down and go, why? Why don't we have like a scaling of this? So this connects to what you're just saying, Brad, with there's really kind of extreme options as a man right now. And on the one hand, it's okay, own it, own that like potentially toxic, but alpha intensity, and run the risk of being accused of being a narcissist at some point, or being really damaging at some point, or being just in the crosshairs.
When you say though, Sam, when you talk about narcissism, I want to just address that for a second, because it seems to be a vernacular now when you take a look at type of disorders, whether it's bipolar disorder, narcissistic disorder. It seems to me that we want to use the word narcissist a lot. Yeah. My husband was a narcissist. My wife she was a borderline personality disorder, whatever the case may be. What do you see in your practice? I mean, do you see that's just being used widely and inappropriately, or is it really there?
So I think one of the things I notice is in the first few sessions, I normally meet with folks weekly, and it takes a little while to kind of get a rhythm. But in those first few sessions, there's almost a need to disentangle the pop culture language from what's really going on. Yeah. And so folks will accuse themselves of having OCD. They're like, oh, I just really care about this.
They self-diagnose.
Yeah. Well, there's this pause of, okay, when you say that, what do you actually mean and what's going on? So narcissism, maybe the most used thing in pop culture.
You see it everywhere.
Yeah. He's a narcissist. She was a narcissist. And we're using it right now, I think we're naming that we've experienced it as the reason to discredit the other. Yeah.
Yeah. When in reality, when you look at DMS-5, you have to have, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm right, to have the actual disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, you have to have at least 5 of the 9 characteristics.
There's all of these pieces.
And, in many cases, people don't. They may have a trait or two, but they really don't. But I think we end up using it out because I want to belittle or discredit you along the way.
Yes. So the DSM, when you look at all these diagnoses, what makes something a disorder? We actually all have a lot of these traits. What makes something a disorder is it begins to affect your ability to have life. Yes, have a life, have relationships, have work, have purpose, have meaning. So I'd use the example sometimes of bipolar, for instance, as the window into this. All of us, all human beings, we're meant to have the full range of emotion. Sadness, when you have hard news, you watch a touching film, you get a card from a friend about their cancer diagnosis. It meant to get in touch with grief. Joy, when you see something as simple as a puppy running in the park, to seeing a long friend you haven't seen in a while, getting a call from someone you love. Right. When that gets blown out of proportion and you are no longer in the driver's seat and you begin to not be able to function, now we're getting to some of the disorders. So narcissistic as a disorder is, yeah, sure. Like, I'm glad that there is a lens on it these days. And is that person incredibly selfish and cruel? Or were they actually a narcissist, as you are claiming in this conversation? So well, that's what I mean in those first few sessions. There's this disentangling of our own self-diagnosis and of the ways that we may have written off other people in our story, which is to say, yes, harm was done. We actually don't need to make it that extreme unless it still fits. And often it does, but maybe not as often as we might like. Right. The weight still mattered. Right. You still carry your story in your body. Yep. You still carry trauma in your body. Yep. If we could somehow get out of our lived experience and jump into somebody else's, we might be more objective, but I can't. I'm in mine. And so my story, my pain is my pain.
One of the areas that I love, speaking of kind of dovetail off of this, is the idea of neuroplasticity. Yes. That we can actually rewire our brains, that we are not always our shame. We're not always our trauma. We're not always, let's say, life events that have destroyed us, we think. Yes. Is that something that's practiced in therapy today? Is that something you strongly believe in, is helping men to rewire their thought process? And is it successful?
Such a good question. And I feel like I have to answer it by, when someone says they're doing therapy these days, I don't know what they mean.
That's a good point. I mean, that's another great point. Sure.
Which is to say, it's almost like you telling me you had coffee this morning.
Yeah. What kind of coffee?
I don't know what that means. Yeah. Was that Folgers out of the tin and a drip? Right. Was that from some third wave place? Right. My wife has these little pink cans that have marine peptides and
yeah.
collagen
Yeah.
and it's oat milk.
Yeah.
Somebody said they got coffee and they got a pink drink at Starbucks and there was no caffeine in it. But we're all having this thing called coffee. I think that's the best metaphor I've been able to find about therapy. So if someone's going to see a therapist, I don't actually know what they mean by that. And I would hope that this therapist is using things like neuroplasticity and interpersonal neurobiology, which is this study of the field of I actually rewire through mirror neurons by watching your emotional reaction to my life. So when I share hard news that I haven't been connected to, but you have a reaction of sadness, you feel shocked by it, something in my brain is actually recalibrating. This is why we need faces. This is why we need relationships, which connects to that piece earlier of the very disconnected loneliness.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Which also connects to the neuroplasticity of we can grow, we can create new pathways.
Right.
When we're in relationship, when we're honest, when we're engaging each other.
So do you believe in, are you part of the I guess a theory more of a directive therapist? What I mean by that is I had a buddy, for example, who saw a female therapist for a number of years, and he would go in and they would talk about his issue, right? And at first he loved it because he wanted to be heard. He wasn't heard. And she really fed into that. And, the questions like, well, I certainly can understand how you feel that way. Tell me a little bit more. What were you thinking? What's going on? But after a period of time, he finally said, I don't feel like I was getting anywhere. I mean, she wasn't saying, have you tried this? Let's take a look at that. Here's an idea for you. And I get the impression that some therapists like the talk therapy, but they don't want to get into really more of the behavioral stuff in terms of you really need to try to do X, Y, and Z. What's your theory on some of that?
That is a story I have heard many, many, many times.
Okay.
And it's Carl Rogers' person-centered therapy, and it's beautiful. And I do personally believe in the limitations of it as well.
Yeah.
Like I've watched that you need it. You need to be able to hear, attune, reflect, and create a space where the other person feels listened to.
Right.
Well, now we've got a foundation. Now you can't live on just a foundation. We need a house. We need the rest of it.
Yeah.
So here's a nugget. Depression and anxiety are considered comorbid, meaning they often show up together.
Yeah.
Depression gets worse when we don't talk about it. We don't give it a voice and we don't give practical tools for it. Depression will actually get louder and louder and louder until we begin to hear it and do something about it. Anxiety is the opposite. Anxiety gets worse the more we talk about it. The more we fixate.
Because we ruminate on it, or why?
Exactly. You ruminate on it. You begin to embody it more. You begin to fixate, and then it's in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
So you've got these comorbid experiences. They're like toxic neighbors that always move into the same neighborhood together. They live right next door, and they actually need the opposite. And so here's the stakes you're dealing with, right? And that talk therapy approach, which is a piece of the therapy, you could run the risk of just ruminating on the anxiety. And Brad, it's a great business model. It'll keep people coming because the anxiety is still there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you say that. I used to, years ago, I was the first crew that introduced as a sales rep Zoloft sertraline. And I can't tell you the number of psychiatrists and even internal medicine family practitioners would tell me, and we talk about it, and I do some preceptorships where you'd see anxiety, like you pointed out, and depression working hand in hand. So you had to be able to kind of treat and work with both.
Yes.
But it was so prevalent.
Yes. Yeah. And they're just in their own gravitational building on each other, watching someone come in. Depression's a pretty common thing for men to come in with.
Is it more so than anxiety in your experience?
I would say so, but that's anecdotally.
Sure.
More of what I see.
I know. I think at one point I had read that generalized anxiety disorder is probably one of the most diagnosed disorders in the country.
Sure. I mean, just take that and just start throwing it at people.
It'll
stick.
It covers everything, doesn't it?
Yes, it really does.
Yeah.
So to your piece on the talk therapy, this is a Sam thing. So I am motivated by 3 approaches. The first is called psychodynamic, which is the story of your childhood and attachment and your family of origin have lasting effects on you.
So when you say attachment, you're talking about attachment style, attachment disorders. What are you talking about there?
I'm talking about attachment styles there.
Okay.
So
all right.
Secure, anxious, avoidant,
preoccupied,
and disorganized as being like kind of the classic
Fearful.
4. Yep. And those are all set by about age 3, and we can change them. It's so helpful to get that framing on, oh, this is why I keep trying to move away first to preempt they're cutting me off.
Yeah, I mean, if you're avoidant, you want to do that. But if you're anxious, preoccupied, what are you doing?
You're going to be moving forward. You're going to be chasing.
Exactly.
And it's going to be the experience of, tell me that you love me. I love you. I don't believe you. I just asked you to. Tell me you love me. I love you. I don't believe you.
Yeah.
And it's going to be this. And often we actually see in couples, one and the other couple up, and you get the person who runs and the person who chases.
But I gather that's kind of a triggering dynamic between each other, right? I mean, you got the anxious that changes, the avoidant who avoids.
Yep.
And there's safety in avoidance sometimes when there's lack of intimacy and how they view safety. And then also the anxious that says, I need the intimacy, I want that, and I want to chase that.
Yes. And I would say it's probably part of our desire to heal the trauma of the past. We're looking for the relationship that mirrors something of our story that we can fix.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I've known a lot of people, when you dig into it, you kind of figure out what their attachment style is. For example, I'm anxious preoccupied, and I can tell you exactly why. And it stems back to my dad. I'm not going to get into it right now, but my point is I know exactly where I am and who I was and kind of how I turned out that way.
Yes.
And kind of my behavior. And so I can kind of see some of that.
And learning to see it, that moment, did that change things for you?
Absolutely. It made me understand how I can have maladaptive behaviors, right? And some things I knew to kind of rethink this, kind of rewire that, and understand that anxiousness is a voice in the subconscious that speaks to you from childhood. That narrative isn't true. And you have to figure out how to say, stop for a second and say, I need to rethink this.
Yes.
And so I've done a better job, I will say, as I've gotten older, to kind of say, who's talking?
Yes.
Who's talking, Brad? Is this a little boy? Or is this the voice of reason and rational thought that says, that's a fallacy, Brad. That's a lie. And you've got to figure out the difference.
It's so good. If there could be a question you're asking regularly, it would be that one. Hang on. Who's talking right now? Whether it's the conversation with your wife or your kids, the conversation with your boss, or you're alone in the car, and there's that thing coming up, the emotion, the experience, the belief. If that little thing could be in there on their shoulder, go.
Well, and I've done a better job of kind of separating in a little time span of separating a deep breath or whatever, and to stop for a second, even a millisecond, and saying, you're feeling the anxious anxiety or whatever you're feeling of this emotion right now. Why? Where is this coming from? Yeah, I can tell you where it comes from now because I remember when it started.
Yes.
So anyway.
Oh, yeah. There's a language in the addiction world that is a well-defined problem is half of the solution. Now, it is only half.
Right.
But it is half.
Right.
And it's one of those, are you glass half full, half empty? It doesn't really matter. Like you can't get halfway if you don't understand where this is coming from.
Sure.
But then that only takes you halfway, and you got the other half to do now.
Yeah, I think half of it, we talked about before, I think half of it is a discovery phase where you begin to understand why you behave the way you do. But the other part of it that I think is the most difficult, and that's where the work comes in, is say, how do I change that?
Yes.
What do I got to do? I got to put the work in. I got to do something to be, to make a difference with this.
Yes. Are you familiar with Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So that's one of the other pieces.
I read that. It's a good book.
It's so good. And his theory is logotherapy, but it's part of a larger umbrella called existentialism.
Yep.
And that's a second piece that I weave into my work, which is that if we could zoom out to 30,000 feet, how would we see the threads of this story, your behavior in it? He has a really great question that does apply to therapy and applies to our lives. If you could be 5 years from now, how would you want to have lived this moment? How will that inform your decisions if you have that perspective of your life? And that is a part of this looking for the momentum, not just I've done the discovery, I've got the data. Now, can you zoom out and see your life and picture where it is you're trying to head? Picture what it is that gives your life meaning.
Right.
The man with any why can live with any how is the most famous quote from Man's Search for Meaning.
That was, like I said, if you haven't read it, I mean, those who haven't read it, by the way, it's an excellent book. It really is. It's worth the read.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Another question I was going to ask you, we see so many women, and not that women aren't phenomenal therapists. I'm not saying that. Let's not go there, get ourselves in trouble. But I think the statistics now are 80 to 85% of all therapists are women. Mm-hmm. Why?
Well, what do you think?
Well, I think, well, first of all, I probably would think that that women are more relational. Women may like or enjoy the therapy process in terms of the connection and conversation that goes back and forth. Mm-hmm. But that's not where it really, when you take a look at Freud and you look at Carl Jung, that was really based in science. But we've kind of converted psychology from more scientific to a little bit more, it's more about, it's more about an art than is necessarily a science sometimes. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I would say, okay. One, I've received such good personal care from so many female therapists.
Oh, sure.
And you're right. It is a predominantly female field, and there's the relational aspect, there's the empathy aspect. And as you say, art and science, yes, you could go see a psychiatrist, you can go see a psychologist, you can go see a therapist, you can go see a social worker, but we're all going to call it counseling kind
one form or
of.
another, right.
One of those is a medical doctor, by the way. And
right.
the
other
psychiatrist.
Psychiatrist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, but that's not in the language anymore, or the average mind. Personally, I actually do like some of the art and then science piece. I love the scientific pieces. Dan Siegel, we mentioned already, is the interpersonal neurobiology. Cognitive behavioral therapy, super helpful.
Sure. A
big piece that I use is that existential. The other is IFS, which we can go into if we have time. But there's this, you are not just an engine. You have a body that operates a lot like an engine, but you have the ways that your story has affected your mind, that those effects on your engine have affected the way that your personality and the way that you present yourself. And so the tool that worked for you is not going to be the tool that worked for the person I just saw an hour before.
That's a good point.
There's
and that's where the art comes in, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And so if I overly systematize it, which I think is why there's always going to be a human element in it.
Yeah.
If you want to just go, hey, ChatGPT can become your therapist,
that's a little dangerous.
It's going to go some dark places.
Yeah.
It already is.
Yeah. I mean, Carl Jung was great about presenting your shadow, the shadow
self. Yes.
Right. Exactly. From a scientific standpoint, but there's more to it than the shadow, isn't there, in terms of the art of how to explain what's going on with you and how to fix that.
There's so much of worldview and design weaved into how someone approaches care.
Right.
There just is.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of phenomenal people that they've drifted either just to like the somatic. And so they work with the body. They use tools like brain spotting, EMDR, massage. I mean, if you want to look at throwing the kitchen sink at a guy with depression, the first three things we're going to look at: movement, nutrition, and sleep. You'd be like,
oh, the fundamentals of health.
Yes.
Right. The building block. Sure. Absolutely.
And we're not dealing at all with family of origin yet. We're not dealing at all with shadow self yet. We're not dealing at all with the unprocessed grief.
Yeah.
But I can see the appeal of just taking one sliver and going, I'm going to live here now. This is all I'm going to do. It feels incomplete to me to ignore the different dimensions of self.
Why do you think men are not getting more involved in the therapy side of it?
I think one of the categories for this has to be the cultural tone around men, that there has been a long-standing stigma from being overly emotional, from being overly intuitive that way, from showing emotion, from showing grief, or from having empathy. So I think there's actually this pull that we are moving away from gradually, that for a man to connect, to have access to emotions, to empathize, it's actually been seen as a flaw or a defect in him for a long time.
So do you think possibly years gone by that men viewed therapy or becoming a therapist as emasculating potentially?
Oh, for sure. I think you could go become a psychiatrist, because then you're still doing the doctor thing.
You've got an MD behind your name.
Exactly.
Right.
And then you can kind of talk about it, but we're really approaching it from that science perspective.
Right.
Not the art perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. No, wouldn't you agree that whether you should see a male or female, that may be somewhat irrelevant. What's most important is the connection you have with that therapist.
Oh, yeah. I mean, did you know that there's studies on this? Okay.
Oh, I did.
So yeah, you could have written one though. There was a bunch of research done on what's the most effective modality. Is it DBT, CBT? Is it EMDR? You name it.
Right.
One of the things I do is called experiential. So it's like, go and write, go and have a conversation, go and do something next. The number one thing, the relationship between the client and the therapist.
Yeah.
So personally speaking, I've had a handful of male and female therapists. And I've noticed there are certain subjects that just feel more appropriate to bring into the setting when I'm talking with another man. If it's going to be my marriage and the ways that I'm not feeling connected there. Personally, I'm going to go talk to another man about that.
Yeah, you kind of feel shame with the woman, wouldn't you?
Well, and it would
Possibly.
also feel like I'm looking for her to solve it in some ways.
Yeah.
It's this invitation to, hey.
I also possibly think the same thing with porn addiction. I'd feel more comfortable talking to a man about that than I might with a woman, because I think she might be judging me, thinking, well, you're nasty.
Right. At the same time, I saw a woman who had like a very grandmotherly type vibe to her.
Yeah.
And it actually let me get access to some of those younger places in me.
Right.
And like with that, who's talking right now? Like, oh, a younger Sam who actually wants time with the grandma that he never got.
Right.
And she got to be this maternal loving presence for categories that completely unattached to what we were just mentioning. And that was exactly what I needed. So the relationship.
Yeah. So I would honestly tell men, if they ask, I would say, look, male or female, they're good. You know, they both have their strengths. Mm-hmm. It kind of depends on the connection you have, whether you want to go with a male or female. And quite frankly, sometimes what you feel most comfortable with. Right. I mean, you know, if you had a horrible relationship with your, let's say, with your mother growing up, and there were some issues there from childhood that you carry forward into adulthood, maybe you don't want to see a female therapist. Maybe you'd rather see a male therapist, and vice versa. Right.
And maybe there's a point in the healing process
where you need to see one.
You need to now.
Absolutely. That's a good point. Excellent point.
And so it's not a guarantee, which.
Yeah. But I do find it's interesting. I'd love to see more men therapists in the field, though. I think that'd be good for men. And I think it'd be good for the field, but anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I watched a podcast a couple months ago, and it was a guy and his team, and they actually travel the world talking to older people about regrets in life and all that. It was fascinating. One of the questions was, what do you think you spent too much time worrying about? And they asked centurions, and they asked people, I think it was over the age of 60, 70, whatever it was. Get this, 85%, no matter what country they're in, 85% people said this: I wish I would have worried less about what people thought of me.
Yeah.
Why do we do that?
Oh, I immediately, you are designed for connection.
Yeah. You
are. I mean, you could say it's back to that World Health Organization study. Mm-hmm. It could be to attachment theory, but there's a way of looking at our behavior that says, I'm a tribal being. If I'm alone, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And so it's in my best interest to have you like me and care about me, and me care about you. And so we can become there's a diagnosis of codependent, and then there's the way that we're using codependence now as a term in therapy. Yeah. You become very codependent, which means I take my temperature of how I'm doing based off of how you're doing.
Yeah. And that's interesting you said that, because it's exactly when you start talking about the limbic system, I was a fawner.
Yeah.
Dad's okay, I'm okay.
Yes.
Dad's not okay, I'm not okay.
Yes.
And there are consequences to that. So, you know, boy, do I get that 100%.
So fawning, as you describe it, like that's on the nose, and it's that your survival mechanism became, I need the aggressor to be well and them be soothed.
It was not only that, it was a form of safety for me. Yes. I felt safe when that was okay, and I didn't so much. I know it sounds weird for a guy to talk about being safe, but as a kid, you really felt that way.
Yes. As a kid, you are more connected to how your parents are doing or how your caretakers are doing than how you are doing.
Right.
And you're actually more attuned to them than they are to themselves.
Oh, yeah.
So you were like the canary in the coal mine for your dad, going, I need to keep him in the sweet spot of his behavior so that I feel
okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Sam, when you kind of raise the red flag, let's say, or the white flag, and say, look, I think they've got a mood disorder, or they could have a personality disorder that is beyond my scope of experience. Yeah. At what point do you identify that, and how do you know when you're going to send somebody else on to, let's say, for a psychiatrist?
Yeah. Yeah. So because of the populations I'm working with, first, we're kind of doing that game of what of this is pop culture language? What of this did you get off of Instagram? And what of this actually fits you? And let's begin actually understanding your behavior. So I'll use like a type of client and depression, for example. I might end up giving them the back depression inventory at some point, which is just a self-assessment to have like an honest, how poorly am I doing on a daily basis? Yeah. There might be this moment where I'd reference the study that was done in Australia on movement, where it outperformed talk therapy and SSRIs by 50%, which I think is pretty wild. Right. But there's this moment there, this crossroads of what would you like to do, hypothetical client? You can either treat your body and some movement as your medication, or we need some help here because we're going around in circles, and us talking about it gave you just enough movement, but we're not getting any further now. Specifically with depression, that it's like that talk therapy example from your friend earlier.
Yeah.
We're connecting, but
we're not really going.
You don't have movement.
Yeah.
Yes. And you understand that going on those walks, maybe then taking it up a notch and going to the gym to get on the cycling bike there would work, but you can't get yourself to do it. This is where I would lean into, it's time to tap in and bring in just the cast for the mind. Like to try and reframe some of there's still some stigma around needing the medication to function. For a lot of folks.
And there's still some therapists out there, I got to tell you, that I know of, Sam, for example, that are really anti drugs per se. I mean, they don't particularly like the SSRIs, largely because of side effects, other things that go on, and they really hesitate to give that person up because they're not really sure that SSRI may be the correct choice for them in depression.
And then for someone like that, Brad, I would go to, is this like pride for you?
Could be, sure.
Is this fear for your clients? Is this, the tool is there. Why are you not using it?
Yeah.
When we get into more of like the severe, if we're heavier into behavior pieces, I've done work with folks with eating disorders, some bipolar folks. And in those categories, the term is a multidisciplinary support team.
Okay.
It's like
best
practice. Like we are, my move in that case is as soon as we begin mapping, we get a couple of pieces of data on this. I'm tapping in and not tapping out myself. It's not quite the white flag, but it will be the red flag of we need other eyes on this so that they have multiple legs of support.
Yeah. And
if that shifts fully over to an inpatient treatment center, okay, but I'm there. It doesn't feel totally like the white flag to me because it should be my job to provide best care.
Sure.
Not just to keep my client load full.
I got to ask, I know you're limited on time. I got to ask you one question that I get asked a fair amount, either through comments of the podcast and other areas. Men in pornography.
Yeah.
It seems to be more and more prevalent because the access. I think about when I was a kid, Sam. I mean, you would sneak a Playboy look off the 7-Eleven shelf.
Right.
That was your extent of pornography. Today, it's not like that. I mean, an 11-year-old kid can open up a phone and see God knows what.
Right.
And it can, I think, it can become an addiction in the sense that it affects people's lives and livelihood and their relationships and their romantic relationships and all. But the question I get is, what do you recommend? What happens when a man comes to you and says, Sam, man, I just can't get off the internet with porn? Yeah.
Yeah, Brad, I'm with you in the access. And I've got little kids. And the way that most cars these days are is that the album is on these, like, I got an iPad as my display and when I'm on shuffle, these album covers are getting, I think, personally, more and more explicit here in 2025. And
absolutely.
My kids are seeing something that I would never have seen as an album cover, and they're in the back seat and I'm just driving them to school. And so like you're saying, the access has skyrocketed. And I think our assessment of what feels, I use the word stimulating. We've lowered the bar on what we think is stimulating because we're so overstimulated.
Yeah, I see so many guys, for example, will say that, you know, they've got like dopamine burnout.
Yes.
And that whatever they were viewing before, the Playboy doesn't do it.
Right.
And now they've got to go to soft porn and then hard porn and then it's crazy porn.
Yeah.
In order to get the same dopaminergic response.
Which is the exact pattern with every other addiction. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
First, it gives you the high, and then you fast forward, and you're just trying to get sort of close to what it used to feel like to be normal.
Exactly.
So this is going to be my approach to the clients that have pornography, and this is brought in through internal family systems, IFS. I know I touched on it just briefly, but there is. I am more concerned with what is below the surface. What is it in you that you are soothing? Are there some best practices like behavior modification and some accountability? Yes, certainly. And if it's causing disruption in your marriage and in your workplace and you need to rebuild trust, we're going to have a whole nother set of pieces and expectations and ways that your life is has a lot more eyes on it. If it's been a betrayal, absolutely. If it's the young man in his 20s who just can't seem to stop, we're going to spend time with think of this as a part of you that would be called a firefighter that knows that you are in pain. You are suffering, and it's going to use whatever it can to make that fire go out. And it does not care about the consequences. And if you can shift this from, gosh, I just can't white knuckle this enough, over to something in me is bleeding and I'm using this to stop the bleeding. I need to find that piece and see if there's a different approach to healing that. And maybe that will affect how I need to soothe. I think we see a lot more change. So this is can we get at what is in pain? And it might be some of that loneliness, and it might be some of that I'm behind, which is a pretty common theme these days. You get on Instagram and you just start going and
I'm not good enough.
I don't have that house. I don't have that car. I don't have that yearly income.
That's a huge problem for men.
So you feel that. And then the next one is some beautiful woman. That sure feels like it's putting out the flame for a minute.
I mean, it provides instant relief, right?
Yes.
Instant gratification,
right?
Which society is big on today. Right. I would think part of that is channeling that whatever gratification you want to somewhere else more productive is probably, whether you feel that way hitting the gym, working on something. But I just, in the conversations I've had, Sam, and I'm sure you've had many, many more than I've had, but that seems to be a real problem for a lot of guys is figuring out how to get out of this death spiral of porn.
Yes. So I would want to throw a little bit of the kitchen sink at it. There would be you actually do need care. You need some kind of soothing, but it's going to be a slower form of dopamine, and it's going to be something that's helpful for your body. So you need to go do something. There's a line from physical therapy. The best exercise is the one you'll do.
Yeah.
So let's make this a really accessible bar while also looking at what is the thing that is causing all this pain and what is the care we need to bring to that place?
So do you see a lot of breakthrough? I mean, it must be really rewarding as a therapist to see breakthroughs, but do you see men, because in some regards, I think men, you can be told what to do, but holding themselves accountable to it's another thing. Yeah. Do you see men breaking through and actually get into the other side? Or is this a struggle that you find and you find a very low success with?
I did not get into the career to just hit my head against the wall over and over again for the rest of my life. Yeah.
Well, I don't blame you.
People change.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I've seen change, and I've also seen it be the battle of their life, where it's going to be an alcoholic self-identifies as an alcoholic for the rest of their life. They understand this is something that I will get sucked into. And therefore I have a life that I live with that as a category. If you can, that's not failure. That's not less than, it's just acknowledging our limitations.
Yeah.
So for some, that's the story.
Question let's say the 12-step AA process, would that work for porn?
There are those programs. Yeah.
Okay.
Sex Addicts Anonymous.
Yeah.
And yes.
They use the same type of 12-step.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Because guess what? We need accountability, but we also need community, and we need to go to the source of the pain, and we need some radical acknowledging of ourselves. Yeah. And we need that ongoing support. We were meant to live in community. Right.
And I think for men, a big part of it is accountability. I know when I was involved in men's group, in the Christian men's group, for example, we'd have tables that we worked in. And if a man was struggling with something and he was vulnerable enough to talk about it, we as men would call him periodically to see how he's doing. Right. And Sam, just that check-in was meaningful. Right.
And I think what I hear in that check-in is, I want to know how you're doing, which is very different than I'm always looking over your shoulder to make sure you're not doing that one thing. Which is the behavior modification. It's just going to send it underground. Yeah. Yeah. And that check-in of, hey, Todd, Steve, I care about you.
How you doing, man?
Yeah.
What's going on today?
I care.
Right.
And I'm here.
Yeah.
That's relationship. Yeah. Which you're offering regardless of how they're doing at the time.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Exactly. Sam, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here today.
Grateful to be here. Yeah. Well, lots to talk about.
I mean, we could go on forever and ever, but I know you've got some time constraints. I do appreciate it so much. I think it's important for men of all ages, but especially young men, to understand the importance of mental health and what we can do for ourselves, and the importance of knowing that if you are struggling, there are people like you, Sam, that can help. Whether it's a counselor, a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever the case may be. Mental health doesn't have to be underground.
Yeah,
we shouldn't live in shame.
Yes,
there are ways we can help ourselves, and there are ways I think that men can get better through people like you. And I want to thank you for what you do. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, honored by that. Yeah. And I just hope that men believe they are not alone.
Yeah.
And that we can reach out to each other.
And they're not defective.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Great to meet you. Take care of yourself, Sam. Thank you very much. To those listening to the podcast, we sure would appreciate a like, subscribe, and follow. And I'd love to hear comments as well. But I want to thank you all for being here today. I hope it was beneficial. And let us know what you thought. Thank you. And men, have a great day. Thanks.